I think we are recording. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So good afternoon. My name is Craig Mackiewicz. I am an alumni of CCS. And today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my career, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. I also don't want to spend too much time on the industrial design process because you guys are probably well aware of the ID process. More so, I want to talk about the snapshot in time of what I do on a daily basis today. What are some new things that I'm working on, as well as some of the things that I've interacted with in terms of failures throughout my career that have led to kind of unique successes in the future. So when Vincenzo asked me to add in some moments of failure, I decided to kind of redefine that word a bit. And I'm calling them non-successes that led to temporary disappointment, but turned out to be an elimination of what I wanted and provided me what I needed. And I think that last sentence is really critical. An elimination of what I wanted to provide me what I needed. And I think that we all experience failure at some point in our lives, and it's nice to reflect back on those and see how they got you to where you are today. You guys have probably experienced them. I know for sure I have. So I'm going to go through a quick timeline of my experiences, kind of a timeline of where I've been. I graduated CCS just in 2008, and you guys all know about the great year of 2009, the recession we had, and so it was a interesting time to graduate right out of school. I was kind of experiencing one of the worst downturns in our economy in a long time, so that was a little rough. And I was also dealing with something else. So this is kind of the first failure that I ran into, or as I'm going to call them, non-successes, is I had no internship until after college. I kind of, at that point, was resting on my laurels a bit. I was doing very well in the classes and putting all my energies into the classes, but I kind of expected almost that I would get an internship through the work that I had achieved, and I didn't put the time and energy required to actually make those things happen or make an internship happen. And I've learned something from that. And really the idea there is to put in the time and energy, more time and energy than you think is even required for certain things. And I'm going to get into that in a bit. But I thought that was kind of interesting as my first failure, and something I reflect on to this day is like, wow, I was really bummed out. I mean, when I went back home over the summer, I had a lot of friends who went off to Chicago or went to some big name companies. And I was kind of sitting there reflecting on my experience and what had led me to get there. And it kind of inspired me in a way. And that's something I'm going to talk about today. But after CCS, the first internship I did get after school was with Altair Think Labs. And Altair is a company that's just north of you guys. It's in Troy. And not having an internship and not getting some of those big companies, I think was a opportunity for me to reflect on the companies that are out there and kind of look at opportunities that may not have looked at prior. So I was looking at the Nikes, the IDEOs, the Smart Designs of the world, really those large companies, thinking that's where I wanted to spend my time as an internship or an intern. But Altair popped up, and it's a smaller company. And like I said, it's just north of you guys. But I thought, you know, let me get my experience, let me get my foot in the door and give it a shot. And so I moved back to New York, where I'm originally from, back to Michigan. So I moved twice in the span of 2 months, back and forth from Michigan to New York and back to Michigan, and spent the 6 months there. I was thinking, I'll spend 6 months here back in Michigan, and I'll move back to New York after that. That 6 months turned into almost 6.5 years at Altair. And the reason that I think it was such a great opportunity is that it allowed me to do some exciting things. One of the projects that I got to work on is this USAF extrication tool. And we got to go to Fort Bragg in North Carolina and do infield research. So that's me on the left in that black t-shirt, and get some one-on-one experience with this elite task force. And what these guys do is they're the team that goes in and rescues Humvee operations or crashed helicopters that are down in enemy territory. So they're a very specialized operative group, and they do training across the board. So Air Force work, they do Army work, they have kind of infield research or infield understanding of engaging with targets as well as medical background so they can help resuscitate or help people before they get to the doctor. So they're incredible people to work with. And I'd never worked with the military before. And so this opportunity with Altair kind of opened up my eyes that, hey, maybe a small company, even though it's not a name brand, still gives me opportunities to work on different products. So this is actually what we ended up creating for them is it's a Jaws of Life tool that helps cut open helicopters or Humvees once they crash. So these guys need to carry these tools with them on their backs into enemy territory. There's no driving there. They're fast roping off of those helicopters. They can't plug these tools in. So we developed this hydraulic Jaws of Life tool that they could use to rescue their fallen soldiers. So it was an incredible experience and an opportunity that I had never foreseen happening going to Altair. I just assumed I would be there for like the 6 months I told you guys. And that was incredible. Then another opportunity came up to work with Blake Leeper, who is a Paralympian. And I was always interested in prosthetics. And this was an opportunity to work with somebody who pushes prosthetic limbs to their complete boundaries. And this was a design that was actually featured in Fast Company. There's an article still out there. You can go read about it. But basically what we did is we used analysis tools to understand what it means to have flat planes that you're running with. You can think of those as wings. So when you stick your hand out the window of a car, you can feel the pressure on your hand. And that pressure is what he's fighting against as he's running. So we developed a new cleat system you see on the right, and as well as kind of this fabric exterior form, and that helps kind of create the same aerodynamics of a human leg. So it allows him the same opportunities or equal opportunity as a human being. A lot of people think that Paralympians actually get a benefit out of the spring from the leg, but that's just not the case, and it's kind of a misnomer. And so they're actually hindered by that flat plane. So we thought that creating this, and we ran a lot of analysis and testing to determine it was actually helpful for the Paralympian to be running with a more aerodynamic form. And this is, again, another opportunity that I never would have thought going into that experience. And so I guess just in reflection about not having the internship and opening up my eyes to maybe opportunities I wasn't looking at in the past or for my future led me down this path. So I think an interesting takeaway there is just being open, even if the company isn't a name brand, because sometimes you get the opportunity to wear a ton of different hats in that experience. So we do everything from graphic design to the ID work to selling, marketing, your design work. We ran the gamut for what we could do. And for me, it gave me experience in all different areas and let me kind of experience even management. I moved up pretty quickly in that company where I was managing a group of about 25 different individuals and a lot of CCS grads. We were able to pull in 15 different grads over the years through Altair. So they've gone through some ups and downs. I've since left there, but they're still a great group and worth taking a look at. But tons of great experience there. If you guys have any questions too, just feel free to raise your hand. You're kind of a small box in the top right corner of my screen, but I would just call out to me if you have any questions. Moving on. So Altair Think Lab, I was there till 2015. And during that time, Vincenzo also reached out to me and asked me if I would come back and teach. So I did teach at CCS. I taught a freshman, sophomore class for a year. So 2 different semesters. Incredible experience. If you guys ever have the opportunity to teach a class, even if it's not at a college level, but even just small classes, we call them lunch and learns here, where you'll teach something you're interested in or something you're excited about to coworkers or even to students. There is an incredible experience. I also, during that year, bit off a lot more than I can chew. So I signed up for the IDSA and became the Michigan chapter chair at that in 2012. And that brought up my next, I guess, non-success. So if you sign up for something, give it everything you have. And I did that for the first 2.5 years of my position as Michigan chapter chair. But for me, it became overwhelming. It started to control me versus me controlling the experience. At one point, I was even asking the IDSA if I could back out, and they were requesting that I continue with the process and just stick with it because they didn't have anybody else who could fill it at that point in time. And I agreed. But what that did is it left my name out there, and everybody still contacted me and expected me to create events and run things. And it looked bad on me because I wasn't doing anything, even though I didn't want to hold that position. I wasn't looking for that position at the time during the last final year. So I think it's important, and something that I've taken away from that experience was that if you do sign up for something, give it everything you have. Just put the time and energy, and know going into it how much is required to give everything you have, because those experiences resonate with not only yourself and your growth, but also what happens down the road and the people that you're interacting with at the time. So it was a huge learning experience for me, and also taught me how to say no at times. You got to be able to tell people that, you're working on other things, and you're not necessarily, it's not the best time for you to be focused on multiple different things. You want to really focus your attention on what's most important, just like you guys are in school. You want to focus on the most important thing there, which is doing incredible work at school. So I think it's an incredible experience. The IDSA gave me so much in terms of networking and opportunities to meet people through those first couple of years. But at a certain point, you got to know when enough is enough. And that was a huge learning lesson for me, for me to be able to say, no, okay, I gotta stop. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we organized a lecture in the auditorium with, I don't remember the name, the guy from Grand Rapids?
Oh yeah, Bliss, Rob Bliss. Yep.
Yeah. How many people were there?
I think we had 7 people.
Yeah, I remember 3, but 7 is a good number. in a big auditorium. That was another great embarrassing event.
That's right. Yeah, that was including, it was 7 including Rob, myself, and you.
Anyway, learning experience.
That's true. That was a good learning experience. So when we had him come out, and I didn't do a good enough job of marketing that event, and we ended up running outside trying to just gather up as many people as possible to get everybody there. So that was definitely learning. Actually, overall, the IDSA experience was a huge learning lesson for me. Running those conferences too, if you guys have gone to the regional conferences, they're a ton of work. So just, like I said, know what you're getting into before you sign up for something, and make sure you have the time and energy to put in everything you have, because we all want to do good work. We all want to make amazing things happen. But yeah, if you sign up for something and you're not passionate about it, it definitely is going to show. So that experience happened to me. I was super excited about it the first 3 years, and then after that, things started to kind of fall apart, and I was realizing that I was putting in way more energy, and passion has gone. So it's interesting and worth noting. And then so after Altair Think Labs, I decided that it was time for some change. So I actually met my wife at school at CCS, and we were driving back and forth from Kalamazoo, Michigan to Detroit. So I was working at Think Labs at the time, and she was working at Newell Brands in Kalamazoo. And so for 4 years, we were driving back and forth, and it was taking quite a toll every weekend driving that long distance. And then I was also realizing that Altair was it was an incredible experience, but it was also a consultancy, and I didn't have any huge, large corporation experience. It's a recommendation I got from a teacher at CCS when I was actually at your level, and he said that if you have a shot, or you have an opportunity to try to work at both a consultancy and a large corporation, because there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a couple differences. And so I kind of took that advice, and in 2015 I decided to switch it up. My wife had already worked at Newell Brands. It would mean that we'd be in the same area. I wouldn't have to commute anymore. And it would give me a new opportunity to learn new growth experience. The one problem is that I had become a manager at Altair, and they weren't looking for managers at Newell. So it was a huge experience for me to try to go back and forth. Do I want to take a demotion from manager to a senior industrial designer again, and go kind of drop down a rung in the ladder, if you will. But I knew that the experience was critical for my path forward. So I needed to have that large corporation experience in order to learn, was I doing the right things at Altair? I had only had the internship there and I'd only worked there. So I knew that was the right move. And even though it was a non-success at the time, I knew it in my heart that it was like, okay, this is probably the right thing to do. This is going to give me the next path forward. So I ended up taking that demotion. Then what happened was that switched to an incredible opportunity for me, which is the position that I'm in now, which is part of this group called RDD, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. But it's given me the opportunity to move back to the New York region, which is where I came from and what I'd always strive to return to. So right now I'm looking at a view of Manhattan. Actually, maybe I'll show you guys if you want to see the.
Oh, nice, thanks.
Yes, this is the view right now. So it's New Jersey, but we're just across the river, so you can see the entire Manhattan skyline spread across, and it's a good spot because it's a lot cheaper to live here, but you still get the benefits of being close to New York City, which has been pretty cool. Has anybody been to this area before? New York City or Hoboken, New Jersey?
New Jersey. I should say, years ago, there were a lot of companies across the river. I don't know, they are still there, but probably not. But it was very common, and I remember I went to open house organized by IDSA, and I'm talking about 20 years ago. There were quite a few along the river in New Jersey.
Yeah, there's a couple of there aren't as many industrial design firms on this side of the river. Most of them are going to now be across the river in the city. So you have Smart Design is over there, Frog and RGA, and a couple of those larger groups. Another big one right now is PepsiCo. They're a pretty big design group in the city, but most of them have now moved into the city. So this has given me an opportunity what I didn't expect, which was to move from Detroit to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and then that got me to New York City. So it was really interesting to have that kind of work. So just a little bit about Newell, so you have an idea of what Newell actually does. So Newell Brands owns a bunch of companies. They own Mr. Coffee, they own Marmot, Rawlings Baseball Glove, Elmer's Glue. They own Bicycle, Ball Jar, a bunch of different companies. So we work on a team that's called RDD, or Rapid Design Deployment, which I'll talk about in a bit, but it kind of spans all of these groups. So it's whatever the higher ups, the president of the company deems important for us to work on at that time is what we jump on. It's a small group, but we get to kind of play around with all these different brands, which is super exciting. You think about consultancies. At my last job, we'd be striving to get one of these companies, but in ours now, we have access to all of them and can interact with all of them. So it's incredibly exciting to just, randomly get a Coleman project in the door, or, or an Elmer's. They're talking about slime, the next generation of slime, all the way to the next generation of ballpoint pen or camping gear. So it's a huge gamut. And then what I decided to kind of talk to you guys about today is these three buckets. So one is RDD, which is the team that I'm on, that I just mentioned. Another one is some of the tools that I'm using. And the last thing is going to be about culture, corporate. And it sounds a little bit boring, but really important to the happiness of all of us as we work in a typical work environment. So it's incredibly important. And each of them are based on some of those failures. So at the RDD team that I'm going to talk about, was only enabled because of that demotion from a manager to a senior designer. The tools that I'm using are inspired by my not getting an internship. So the fact that I didn't get an internship because I didn't force myself to kind of look at different experiences allows me now to jump on and try new tools constantly because I want to be ahead of the curve. I'm going to share a bunch of the tools that I'm using today with you. And the last one is culture, this idea that if you sign up for something, give it everything you have. And I've recently signed up for something here at the company, and I'm trying to give it everything I have, and it relates to the culture. The first one is RDD. RDD stands for Rapid Design Deployment. And basically what that means is that we jump on projects that the president of the company deems as like, these are critical to the corporate success. And these 5 people who are part of the RDD team, myself included, are going to be focused solely on these projects. So one of them was a home fragrance pop-up store in Soho. I've never thought in a million years that I'd be working on a pop-up store in Soho, but it was an amazing experience. So we got to design each of these different zones within the store itself. This one on the right is for Woodwick. It's one of the candle or home fragrance brands that we own. And this whole room was designed tilted sideways so people can take Instagram shots like the one you see here where they're standing on the wall or hanging from the ceiling. And it was just opportunities for people to experience home fragrance in a different light or a different way. And so it was incredibly exciting and something you don't think you're going to work on when you leave school with an industrial design degree. But this was such a quick and exciting opportunity to work on that. And it was completely new. I'd never done anything like it before in my life. So these opportunities, I think, are important and only came from that demotion, which sounds crazy, but this was the benefit from it. Another thing I'm working on that's completely different from what I'm used to in product design is the e-commerce site. So now we're working on a site that kind of takes all the product that we have and sells it on one website. And I've never really done web development until I started at Newell, but after joining here and just playing around with some of the tools that are out there and working closely with incredibly talented people who know e-commerce and know how to do web design, I've learned so much. And like I said, this is an opportunity that I never would have thought would happen. Do any of you guys play around with web design or 2D design? Yeah. Yeah. It's incredibly fun, and there's some really good tools I'm going to talk about a bit later that some of you guys may already know them, but these are tools that we're using right now. Work kind of through both app design and desktop web. Another thing that I'm learning right now, or that I've learned, is the futures process, and this is because my new boss is actually a futurist, which I've never worked under a futurist or never thought I would be working under a futurist before, but he has worked at NASA and he has worked with a lot of the big electronics companies, computer companies, to build out what our futures look like. And we're lucky enough to now have him on our team. And this is a graph that he talks about, and I've never seen anything like it. So I'm going to try my best to describe it to you, to give you a sense of what is it like to be on a team that works on advanced projects and really kind of far out projects in a corporate environment. And this is one of the tools that we use in order to sell designs in to the corporation. So what you'll see here is just a graph that we use to describe it. Each one of these lines is Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3. And what you can think about this as is like concept cars are at Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. Horizon 1 is the next generation of car that's coming on the market. And most corporations develop concepts within, for Horizon 3, for concept vehicles, they want to create these wild concepts. But most companies want to kind of create something that's very simple. So they want to create designs that are close to the center line. So that idea is that they don't want to do stuff that's safe, that they know investors are going to like, that they know that the Wall Street's going to like, they know that aren't huge risks. But as design, we want to take risks. We want to push design boundaries. So we call this ABCQ. So you can see at the top, we have the alphabet. A is a concept that is very close to home, something that's very safe for a company, whereas Q is bordering on the line of making everyone in the company uncomfortable and pushing the boundaries of anything they're used to seeing. Z is stuff that we only keep within the design group because we know that if we push that out to the corporation, they think we're absolutely nuts. So when we develop ideas for both Horizon 1, next generation product, or product that's coming down the line like 3-5 years down the road, we always try to go with this idea of the ABCQ. Create concepts that we know are going to be close to home, that people are going to feel comfortable with, but also try to push the boundaries of what could potentially be. And the reason that you have that V shape is because when we look at trends and changes in the in society, there's things that happen. So for instance, the whole thing with Facebook right now, the fact that they've lost so much value really changes the game if you're developing products or things that work or interact with Facebook. So the idea here is that if you just focused on A concepts that are safe, that align perfectly with what Facebook is doing, you'd be in a lot of trouble right now because Facebook is not doing so hot. So the idea that if you have this gamut, you can quickly adapt to the changing trends. So let's say it shifts and we need to go with concept F at that point. But at some point in the future, let's say Facebook completely goes away or something crazy happens, that may lead us to go to a concept that was entirely different for Horizon 3. So this trend line that the company wants to take, which is always focused on the safest thing, isn't always true when you get to Horizon 2, Horizon 3, because trends and things change so much in society that we have to always be looking as designers at what are the ABCQs, what is that entire gamut of potential for society out there, what are the society norms. So another example might be processing power. There's some crazy new technology that increases processing power. Can we take advantage of that? Well, if we can't in Horizon 1, we should be able to on Horizon 2 or Horizon 3. And so if we're thinking about these things in advance, then we have concepts that could help, that can help fulfill those needs. So this is interesting because we sometimes get so focused on what are the products we're developing next, but it's sometimes difficult to develop those like roadmaps of what can happen down the road. So for us, we try to focus on really just that center zone. That's where we're trying to develop the most concepts as we think about 3 to 5 years out. We try to develop in the studio all the way up to Z, but we're trying to find that line of comfort for the, and we don't really present stuff outside of that, but we try to present stuff within that. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that like a...
Yeah, very interesting. Very.
It's the first, yeah, I haven't really talked about this outside of the company, so it's kind of, I don't know if that was incredibly clear, but that's the type of terminology in the way that we think about things as we develop out roadmaps for products.
So the maximum you plan for is 5 years?
So that's a great question. So it depends on the brand. So some brands change very rapidly. Some brands like our candle brands, for instance, they change on a yearly basis, whereas Papermate or Sharpie marker, for instance, they change maybe every 5 to 8 years. So this horizon does change based off the brand itself. So we're planning out typically up to 3 horizons for that potential brand or for that particular brand. So we're thinking Horizon 3 for Sharpie is kind of pushing the boundaries of what Sharpie does now and what they could potentially do, 5 to 10 years from now. Sometimes these things are difficult too, or challenging because the company only has so much time or resources to put on projects. So for our group, we do our best to jump on Horizon 2, Horizon 3 concept work so that we can have a vision in case there are disruptions in the market or things change. But their attention is always that first arrow at the bottom on Horizon 1. What's the next thing to get out? So we always have that Horizon 2 or Horizon 3, and sometimes just in our back pocket ready to come out as soon as the company is ready for it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So that's a little bit about the RDD process, and that's something I learned from Lloyd Walker, who is our senior vice president. Again, he's the futurist, and he came up with that graph, and he's the one who kind of helps us, or is proponent for us, after develop products. Next thing I'm going to talk about is some of the tools that we're using, and these are things that you guys may already use, and I can shoot an email to Vincenzo with a list of these tools, but to give you kind of a picture of what I do on a daily basis or what tools that I'm using right now, I think is incredibly helpful. Outside of the standard Adobe and Rhino product, I'm going to talk more about additional products that have helped us significantly. And again, this is based off of that non-success or that technical failure of not getting that internship after college. It makes me always fight and try to learn new things. And don't just get comfortable with the tools that you have access to. Always try to expand your knowledge, because for me, it's been with YouTube and just having tutorials online. It's incredible what you can learn in just 2 hours worth of work on a new technology. The first one is Blender. Does anybody in class or any of you guys use Blender right now?
No.
So what's great about Blender is it's an open source CAD software, and I don't suggest you guys replace it from what you guys currently use. But what is incredible is that it has some physics built in, and it's constantly changing, and it's absolutely free. So one of the things that I'm testing out and playing right now is we have the Coleman and Marmot tent companies. So I've been working on this stitching and fabric program. And this is after 2 hours of work in the program. And I don't know how to build anything. I'm just importing solids from Rhino or SolidWorks, whatever you guys use. But you can apply physics to these materials and actually make, for instance, fabric tents look more like fabric. So I started off on the left, really, really basic form. I mean, this takes, what, 6 minutes to build or something crazy. It's not that complex, but how do you make that material look way more realistic? And with Blender, they have incredible physics fabric tools. You can even set the type of fabric like silk or cotton, and it will react differently. There's a great tutorial on creating a flag that's waving in the wind, so you can create different velocities of wind and just make this really cool GIF of a flag. And although that's not necessarily important for a project, just knowing that you can create a fabric and make it look real is so useful when you're doing renderings or showing in context views of your product. So I highly recommend jumping on Blender. Like I said, it's absolutely free and it's such a powerful tool. And there's so much more to it than I'm talking about now, but the fabric one is a huge help, especially if you're doing a project right now with fabric. It's very difficult to make that look real in CAD. And this takes, again, I think it was about maybe 2 hours to 3 hours of me literally opening the program brand new, fresh to it, and getting the results on the right. So it is a little bit of an investment time, especially now. I know you guys are probably swamped with work, but it's definitely worth it to play around if you have a moment to do it. Another one is Envision. Has anybody used that before? So Envision is it's a free application. Guys, it's incredible right now what's free. I don't know how, I mean, especially for you guys as students, there's so many free programs out there, but Envision is absolutely free for an individual or small team to work on. But Envision basically lets you create applications, like iPhone applications and desktop apps. All you're doing is plugging in visuals of what you want the application interface to look like. And then it creates a link for you, and you can bring it up on your phone and actually show, hit buttons and have it switch to different screens, and just gives you a way to kind of walk through a project and make something look incredible. Definitely worth it if you have any app that's associated with a product that you're working on. You can literally pick up your phone and show the application on your phone without a ton of work. This is an incredibly simple tool as well. It's very, drag and drop friendly. Drag screenshots onto your into the program. It's all online. You don't have to download anything. And then again, it just develops a link, and you just open that on your. So I again highly recommend playing around with the tool if you have some time. Bare Conductive. This is a really fun material. So this is more in the physical realm instead of the digital realm. But we're using it right now for prototypes. What you can do is you can actually use this material and paint on it to create circuit boards, basically. So this is a kit that you can get from Bare Conductive. It's a fun project. I think the whole kit maybe, I think it's 20 or 30 bucks, but you get each of the three lights that you see here. And all you do is it's a tube of conductive material that you can lay out, and it links to certain parts of a circuit board and lets you turn on and off lights. But what's great about this, they're just using it on paper, but you can actually 3D print stuff and create circuit boards on 3D print. So if you want to create a lamp, you buy this kit and you build a lamp with CAD that fits the circuit board. They provide the LEDs and everything, and then you could just run all your circuiting with the paint. It's incredibly useful to create little models and stuff. A lot of fun to use. And this was a Kickstarter project. Another big one is I think this is the most important is virtual reality. Has anybody used virtual reality tools before? Any of you guys used it? But have you guys used it in projects at all, or is it mainly?
No, we are slowly starting.
Okay.
We have a couple devices that was using trans, and we are trying to work more on that, having more equipment, and then eventually one person in charge of that.
Yep. So I would, if possible, I would definitely recommend the Samsung Microsoft Odyssey. It was a collaborative piece. That's a mixed reality, they call it. So you can see on the front, on the left one, it's got 2 cameras. So you don't need to have these giant stanchions in your room. So there's 2 cameras on either side of the room for the HTC Vive, and you have to create the space. The Samsung Microsoft Odyssey, you could pick it up and plug it in anywhere and it will work. And what we say is this is incredible for giving people presence. So we've built out entire stores within virtual reality. We've created displays, so like end cap displays. We've also created appliances. So we developed an entire room full of appliances. We own Calphalon, we own Sunbeam, and a couple more, Mr. Coffee. So those, we actually take the product from CAD and we very quickly dump it into a program called Unity, and you can throw these on and actually see your product in virtual reality. And literally it takes no more than 20 minutes with the right tools and technology and kind of understanding of how to just import the model. But like I said, it's incredibly basic, but it lets you, instead of having to build a physical model or wait for a 3D print or visualize it on a 2D screen, you can literally put this on and go into 3-dimensional space and visualize your product. It's been so useful for us. We've been using it for about a year now, and we're actually running design reviews. So this is the first time that I've ever experienced it, but we're doing design reviews with marketing teams where they're putting these units, the head units on, and actually visualizing the product in 3-dimensional space, and that's what they're approving. Another great one is, like I was showing earlier, the tents for Coleman. We've actually built out and imported tents. You can buy entire forests. It's like a 40-acre forest, and I think it was $40. I wouldn't personally pay that because it's a little expensive to be paying for an entire forest, but the company is willing to buy it. But you could build this, you place products inside of a forest, or you can buy kitchens, you can buy different rooms in the house, and you can literally place your product in it and have this this system ready to go that you can kind of show your model off in 3 dimension. It's a powerful tool, and I personally know people at a ton of big companies are currently getting into this as well. So Nike currently has it. I know that Pepsi has it. I know that some of the big design firms in New York have it. So everybody's starting to interact with this, and it's becoming more and more popular. So a big program that I use here is Unity, and this is another program like Blender. It's incredibly powerful, but it's free. I don't know how they get away with it, but it's absolutely free, worth downloading. All you do is you're importing. What kind of programs do you guys use for CAD? Do you use Rhino or SolidWorks or?
Both of them.
Both? Okay. So you can import both of those into Unity. Both of those files. At the very least, you can import step files. And this is the gateway to using the HTC Vive or the Samsung Odyssey for you to be able to kind of pick. I actually created a video, so maybe I'll send that to you, Vincenzo, if you want to send that out to everybody. But it's a 20-minute video and just shows you how to import product directly into Unity. Definitely worth doing. This is the Unity interface. So again, there's so many tools, and it can get a little lost in it. But like I said, you spend about 2-3 hours just watching a couple of YouTube tutorials, and you'll pick it up. You guys are smart. If you know Rhino and you know SolidWorks or one of the two, you'll be able to get this pretty quick. Like learning a language, you learn the first language. The second language is a little easier to learn. That's the same thing here. This Rhino or SolidWorks is very difficult initially, but once you know it, these programs become pretty easy to take on and learn. So I'll send you, like I said, Vincenzo, I'll send you a link with, I'll send you an email with a bunch of links of these different programs and some of the tutorials that I've seen online. They're definitely worth checking out. and spending a little bit of time on. Don't rest in your laurels and just get comfortable with the program that you're using now. It's so important to just keep testing out new programs and just playing around with what's out there, because some of these tools just reduce the amount of time and interaction that you need to do, and you can spend more time designing and doing what you love to do. So definitely recommend it. One other big one for VR is this Gravity Sketch. This is a great tool for visualizing things in 3 dimensions. You can actually import CAD geometry into this as well and then sketch over it. You can't export that, unfortunately, but I can foresee them creating that eventually. But this is such a cool experience to be able to virtually sketch. It takes different muscles than if you're sketching 2-dimensionally. So the first ones that I did reminded me of some of the stuff I was doing in high school when I was sketching. So it takes a little bit of getting used to entire sweeps with your arm, but it's so much fun to get into 3D space. And if you go on Instagram and just hashtag gravity sketch, there's a couple of people online that are ID people who post some of their visuals, and you can see what they're creating. Tons of shoe sketches. I think this one, yeah, so this is one of the shoe sketches that somebody did. They're not highly detailed, but to give you a sense of form, it's second to none, because you can build this pretty quickly. So has anybody used Gravity Sketch before? Is that also new? Yeah, it's a pretty powerful tool. I think this one does cost, I think this is $20 for the year or something. It's not too crazy. And then the last one I'm going to show is Dialogflow. This takes a little bit more time, but this is another tool that we're using. Dialogflow is, although it looks a little complex initially, is another program that's incredibly easy. But what it allows you to do is basically code your own voice interaction program with Google Home. So you can literally put in, what time is it, and teach this program to give you certain responses. So if you're doing a project that you say is voice enabled, through Dialogflow, you can literally make that happen. This one I would say would probably take a couple days just to get used to and try to interact with, but you can type in and develop out your own code and have Google Voice respond to it. So as you're talking, it will respond to what you've listed as the proper responses. And this is really cool if you're doing voice-enabled projects. I think these pucks now, the Google Homes I think those are 30 or 40 bucks now. So they're a little pricey, but it's worth interacting with. And I think that's a general rule of thumb. If you guys have the opportunity to buy any of this stuff, does anybody use connected home devices right now? Like a Google Home or Echo or any of that? You do? You guys are going to be going into companies where they're going to be looking to you as the individuals who are kind of setting the path forward for design and for not only the aesthetic, but also company vision and strategy. And IoT devices and this type of voice-enabled interaction is going to be huge down the road in the next 5-10 years. It's increased 129% over the previous year of the number of homes that have it inside their, or use it on a daily basis and have it in their home. This is going to become huge. So if you haven't interacted with one, I would definitely recommend trying to get one or have a little bit of interaction with one if possible. But Dialogflow is pretty cool if you're doing an interactive product. That's some of the tools. You guys have any questions on the tools or anything from that segment?
Very clear. Excellent.
InVision, do you do the graphic design in there too? Or is that you have to import stuff into InVision?
Which program?
InVision? Do you do the graphic design in there too? You can't really do too much design work. I'd recommend doing that in Illustrator or Photoshop, because the tools in there are mostly built around, you kind of just highlight areas that you consider buttons, and then you link those to different pages. So if you develop out all the pages, it's basically a program that allows you to link from one screen to the next. If that makes sense. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Have you used Adobe XD?
So when we started the it's funny you asked that, because the first project we worked on was
was a Parker project. So Parker pens, they do a lot of, like, this is one of the Parker pens. They do like jotters and some high-end pens. They do duofolds and stuff. So we worked on a project to redevelop their site. And Adobe XD was only available at that point on Apple products. So we started just using InVision. And because of that, I never jumped on to XD. So that's something I definitely want to check out. Have you used it?
I haven't used it. I know some people have here at the school. I think you have used it. But I know in that you can animate like the actual buttons. Are you able to get that in InVision as well?
Yeah, you can animate. A lot of it has to do with rollover state. That's really there's no built-in animation. So yeah, if XD offers some animations, then yeah, I would give that a shot if that's what you're looking for. Because I don't think you can do that. You could do rollover state, like I said, where you just drag and drop another image over the top and just have it switch that way. But there's no built-in animations as far as I'm aware right now in InVision.
Is that how it is in XD?
Well, it's like you can do rollovers and stuff like that, but the biggest drawback that I've found so far with XD, I don't know if they're going to change it soon, is that when you make a app or a wireframe on your computer, you have all the fonts available on the computer, but then when you actually preview it or view it on the Adobe XD app, it's limited to like app or fonts that you have on your phone or something like that. So like it changes like basically all the fonts to these default things, and it looks nothing like the app that you developed on the computer. So I don't know if there's a workaround for it or a way to like package it so that the apps are included with the file, but that's one problem that I ran into.
Yeah. That's a good point. The thing that, yeah, that's, I guess what's good about InVision is since you can't develop any of that, it doesn't come out as each of them are basically JPEGs at that point that we're importing. So that's it's not a source file that we're using on InVision. So I don't know if XD can do just the JPEGs, but that's what InVision uses. So that way you can still make sure the visuals all look identical to what you've created. So I guess that could be a benefit, but it's definitely a program that I'd like to give it a shot and try it. Thanks for asking the question. The last thing that I'm going to talk about really quick is culture. And this is something this goes back to that one experience I had with the IDSA. So if you sign up for something, give everything you have. And culture is interesting because it's not something that comes up that often when you're talking about companies and where you want to work. You're usually thinking about the type of work. And I'm not arguing that that's something you shouldn't think about. I think the most important thing. But what's interesting about culture is that you have an effect on the culture of wherever you go. You guys have a culture right now at CCS, and we have a culture here at Newell. And developing that culture is something that needs to happen. And like I said, it's not something everybody typically focuses on, but here at Newell, we've been focusing quite heavily on it. And so recently there was since this Hoboken office is pretty new, we tried to develop out our culture a bit more. I'm going to tell you about how that happens. So like I said, typically we think about work as like, okay, it's the standard, this is the ID work. What are we kicking out? How are we going to get from A to B? But part of that work is also the experience of the people that you're working with. So this is the team here in Hoboken, and this is us on a team field trip. And it's important to us that we constantly think about how we all interact and what is the culture that we want to develop here in our work environment. And this goes without saying for any location. Every location that you go to, every spot that you go to intern at or get an internship at or you go to work at, is going to have a culture. It's just whether or not you're working on it to help it be something that's amazing. So here at Newell, we have these things called culture clubs. And each one of these clubs is run by somebody who's on the design staff. So on the far left, we have something called Recognition, which is a club dedicated to recognizing people within the design organization, the design group. We have Mastery, which is a team dedicated to just focusing to developing content or videos for people to watch to improve their knowledge or their experience with certain things. We have Community. This is an opportunity for us to get engaged with the community around us, to be a part of where we live and work. Habitat is all about designing out the space where we work. Field trips, like you just saw, is just focused on getting us out of the office and going to different locations. Experiencing, either in Kalamazoo, we did beer tours of Bell's Brewery. We do trips up to Grand Rapids to go to Herb & Miller to see their space. We do trips to the auto show or to home and houseware show. And then the speaker series is about bringing in people from all over the country to speak to us and inspire us. In the last two, we have food and fun. So this is just about having fun within the office. And I'll show you some stuff about that. And then health and well-being is the newest group. And this is dedicated to, are we thinking about our health and our well-being within the office place? So for instance, snacks that are healthy and that kind of stuff. So these culture clubs were all developed by our SVP. He developed all this kind of concept, but it's up to myself and the rest of the design staff to make them happen. And we absolutely love them. So one thing we did is like a book club. So everybody brought in a book that they absolutely love, and we put it up on this wall and you can check it out. So if we have a couple of books, people sign out the books and they'll read it. Great way to share some of the knowledge that you're thinking about. We have snack attacks, we call them. So this was during the holidays. We had hot chocolate. We did hot cider. So just things that are fun and engaging. We redesigned our front entryway. So we started to highlight some of the products that we create. And then we pay for all that through something called a garage sale. So these are all the product samples that we end up getting after a whole year of kind of developing product. This allows us to get about $8,000 to $9,000 a year, and we all just buy the product. And you can see it's just tagged with just a small cost, and then all this money goes back to pay for all the events that we're doing. We also have that recognition club, so you can nominate people within the company or within the design group who have done an excellent job, and it gives us as designers the opportunity to recognize our fellow designers and the stuff that they're working on, or how much work they're putting into a project, or how much passion we see they have for a project. So it gives us an outlet for recognizing those individuals. So culture for us is incredibly important, and something that I think that for you guys, as you go into your next next job, or you're looking towards the future, these are some of the things that I kind of took away from these highlighted ideas. So we have the RDD group. Sometimes the path forward isn't the most obvious. That was really critical for me. After taking that demotion, it wasn't the most obvious to do that, but it ended up being an incredible experience. Never stop being a student. Those tools that I showed you, 9 out of 10 of them are free. They're worth just taking a look at. Spend a couple hours. There's so many amazing YouTube videos and tutorials that are out there. So many free tools that are out there now, especially for students, or just you doing it as a learning license, they call them. So you can download it, even if the license costs money. Most companies will just give it to you for free if you're just trying to teach yourself the program. And then finally, every location that you go to, a culture exists whether you create it or not. So this idea that you can develop an environment that fosters success and teamwork is always, as long as you do it with intention, is so important. So when you guys go off into the companies where you work, don't feel like wherever you go is just, that's the snapshot and that's how it's going to be. You guys can create those small book clubs, or bring in hot chocolate, or do something small, even though it is tiny. It gets you to know the people that you're working with. It builds relationships on a different level, and just helps you work so much better with the people that you're around. The group that you're with right now, the class that you're in right now, those people you'll know for the rest of your life, and you'll see them throughout your careers. You'll see them go off to different locations. And I still stay in contact, even a decade after being out of school, with people that I graduated with. And they're all over the country, and it's incredible to know and be able to reach out to them still at those companies. So do everything you do with intention, and make sure you work on that. Make sure you work on the culture, and don't feel like you're walking into the location and that's all that it's going to be. It's so critical to be a part of it. And again, that's just, those are just the things that I've kind of learned. And those are kind of those three failures that I've interacted with, or non-successes that have led to some interesting storylines. So I appreciate your time, and love to answer any questions or talk to you guys a little bit further about any of those things you saw.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. If you don't mind, we can take some time for questions if you have. And you can turn the share screening. You can turn off so we can see you bigger.
Oh, okay.
And you can see, and we can see us. Wonderful.
Yes. How you guys doing? Your faces now. It's only a thumbnail in the corner. Good. Hey, I mean, I have a question for you guys just to kick it off. What kind of programs are you guys using now? Are you using stuff that's kind of new and unique that you feel like is helping you in your career at school?
Did you ask what tools we use?
Yeah, what tools? Yeah.
I know a lot of us, it's something we've all used, but just Illustrator, and a lot of us are doing more rendering with inside of Illustrator.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have been pushing forward with like 3D modeling a little bit too fast. So just like taking a step back and just getting it to a point where like the design is solid and you can show it like the full content with just like a rendering of line work rather than like a full 3D model.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's something at least I've been focusing on, just because like there is limitations what I can do in modeling programs. So I think it's useful for what I need so far. The 2 internships I haven't had to 3D model, so
Yeah.
it's been different.
That's cool. Yeah, it's really fun to learn those different technique than you're typically used to. So yeah, I was doing a little bit of Illustrator work, and we have a designer on the team who focuses mostly on she does mostly Illustrator design work. It's pretty cool to see how quickly she can do it now. So yeah, in my mind, I'm like, oh well, that's going to take a while. But then I see somebody who's a power user, and she can like crank out so many different sketches and designs using Illustrator. Just as faster than I can in Rhino. So it's impressive, especially for organic shapes like shoes and soft goods and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's mostly what I've used it for as well.
Yeah.
Good for like colorization as well. Since create everything within inside of the path, you just change the appearance of like the shapes.
Yeah.
You can like get this exact same render over and over again with different colors. Which in like Photoshop or whatever is a bit harder.
That's cool.
One thing I use is Fusion 360. I got into it because I wanted to just do 3D modeling on the Mac side, and the SolidWorks doesn't have anything for that. But it turns out I think it's a really useful program. I think it might supersede SolidWorks. We'll see. It's definitely like more integrated. Like you can do all your soft surfacing and hard surfacing and sculpting and even rendering in there.
Yeah.
Rendering's still kind of bad, so you still use KeyShot, but it's definitely easier than SolidWorks, I think.
Yeah. Do you use it mostly for ideation sketching, or is it mainly like final product CAD work?
Go all the way through.
Okay. Nice.
But you can. I think the where it shines the best is in like soft surface stuff, because you can switch to a different workspace in there where you can like sculpt and pull and push surfaces, and then you switch back out of it back into the solid workspace, which you can't. SolidWorks can't really do any soft stuff in there, so it's kind of like Rhino and SolidWorks combined.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Take a note of that. Is that free, do you know, or is that a?
Yeah, it's like free for students like and small companies. I think it's under like 20 people or something like that.
Okay, cool. Nice.
There's a lot of like good plugins and things for 3D printing and laser cutting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was shocked at the plugins. Even SketchUp. Even I know SketchUp is so basic. Have you guys used SketchUp at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only reason I got back into SketchUp is because Unity has a direct interface with SketchUp, so you could basically update a model in SketchUp and have it load into Unity, into virtual reality. It's not good for product design, like for complex forms, but if you're doing like an environment or a form, like if so you're doing an exhibit display or something, it's really cool to work with that and Unity at the same time. It's pretty fun. And they have a ton of plugins, and the fact that they have a warehouse, a 3D warehouse, you can download a ton of different stuff. So if you are doing an exhibit design, for instance, you can download a bunch of furniture and stuff like that, and it's all free through SketchUp. Pretty cool. You guys have any other questions or thoughts? Yeah.
Your initial switch to Newell, I take it you're in a different department than you are now. What triggered you to like, or triggered them to offer you this position, or like when did that arise and how did it arise?
You're talking about the rapid design deploy, the RDD. Yeah. So being in Kalamazoo for an extended period of time, I was working on a couple different brands at the time. I worked on Papermate, I worked on Calphalon, Parker, some of the fine writing pens, there's like Rotring and stuff. So I had worked on a couple different brands, and there was a point in time where they were opening up this office in Hoboken. So the current Newell headquarters is, or was at that point, down in Atlanta, Georgia, and along with the marketing teams. But a bunch of the C-level individuals, CEO, CMO, CFO, they all worked up in New York. So they decided to switch the headquarters to Hoboken. And the design SVP at Newell wanted to make sure that design had a close seat at the table, really basically in the same building as some of the C-suite or C-level individuals. So they said that they were going to be opening this design group. This is a point in time where I took a huge risk because they didn't tell us exactly what the position was going to be. They just said it was going to be a design position. And so myself and my wife at the same time raised our hands. So we're again working at the same company. And only a couple other people I found out actually raised their hands to move to Hoboken. And part of that, I think, was just because we didn't know what the heck we were getting into, what we were signing up for. So it was a pretty big risk because, you know, we sign up for something, we get here and we realize it's nothing like what we thought it could be or what we had envisioned. It could have been pretty rough, but it turned out to be an incredible experience because now we're working on, like I said, those advanced design concepts and really presenting quite frequently to the higher ups of the company. So what triggered that was just basically our desire to try something new and be a part of the company still. We knew we didn't want to leave the company. Like I talked about culture, Newell has an incredible culture, so I didn't want to leave. But I was also looking to be back in New York City area. Tons of family as well out here. So it was a big desire for me to get back out here. And so I ended up we both raised our hands, and only 5 people, I guess, the company of 120 designers raised their hands to move back out here. So pretty great experience, but it was more of a shift or a different type of learning. Desire to do something different, you know.
And where is Crystal working? In which area?
So she's working on home fragrance. So Crystal also graduated CCS. She was in industrial design, graduated in industrial design, and then she ended up moving into or transitioning to CMF design. And so now she's working on the home fragrance division. So she's responsible for the next generation of what's coming out for a lot of the candle brands. So Yankee Candle, Woodwick, and Chesapeake Bay. Millefiori is another one. So we have a couple of candle brands under our umbrella. So she's responsible for a lot of the work that comes from fragrance houses, as well as the color and overall design for the home accents and the candles as well. So we work diagonal from each other. So we sit literally like one desk away, which is pretty wild to be able to work closely with family. You know, it's pretty wild. It's a good experience.
At RDG, do you only do like conceptual products, or do you actually submit like final designs for anything?
We initially did mostly concept work, but you saw with that like the Soho pop-up store, that was unexpected, and all of a sudden that came out of left field that we were going to be doing this pop-up store for the home fragrance division, and that was from concept to actual construction within 4 months. So that was the first project where we thought it was just going to be concept work, and then all of a sudden turned into immediate production work. And we've just developed a couple products that we presented to the higher ups, and they they like them a lot. So they're actually pushing for production by 2020. So we're not doing any production work. We're not doing the final work. It's still going to go to the team in Kalamazoo to do the rest of the CAD development, the design development. But we're still focused solely on the advanced work. So we haven't done, and we don't plan on doing any production work to get out the door. It was interesting to jump into that space to get out of, I guess, not having a product necessarily be on the market. It's, as designers, I think coming out of school, that was the dream. And I still have products that are on the market now that I can go to the store and I can see. And that's what I thought I really wanted. But it's been exciting to try to sell in concepts and designs within a company. And you see the result, but they change when they get out the door, the final, because there's so many different layers that go through that project throughout the years. But for me, it's been amazing. Even though I'm not seeing, final product go out the door, we're still only focused on concept work. But I absolutely love it.
I was gonna ask, within working with like so many different brands, is it tough to kind of like jump back and forth brand to brand and like kind of like have a knowing observation of like where each brand is at and where trends are, because you're working with so many different companies and so many different products?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually use a tool called it's called the Need Scope, and that's an hour-long presentation in and of itself. But basically, the way that it works is we don't necessarily develop products based on demographic, and I know that sounds pretty crazy because we do a lot of demographic work developing product traditionally. But the idea is that we develop and design products based off emotional state. So the way that works is that Mr. Coffee, for instance, or let me use the Papermate brand, for instance. So Inkjoy Papermate, there's a ton of pens, but they live in this need state called enjoyment. So it's about having fun. It's about feeling creative. It's being inspired, being energetic. So we designed the brand based off of that. Sharpie, on the other hand, is something we call status. So the idea that it's permanent. There's different kind of characteristics of that brand itself. But there's other brands that live in that same need state. And so for us, we basically have an understanding of the need state, and we can switch really quickly from brand to brand because we understand what are the emotional requirements and the needs of the people who buy product within that need state. It's a little bit hard to describe, but like, for instance, the Calphalon brand is in the control need state, but so is Parker Pens. So they both are products that are very technical in nature. They are very simple in design. So Calphalon pens, you don't see any embellishment. You never see bright colors. Same with Parker pens. You never see bright colors on a Parker pen. So they all hold similar characteristics, even though they're completely different brands. So even going into something like that, as a design group, after you've been at the company for probably 2-3 years, you've designed products within each of those need states, and you start to understand it. And it's funny, if you end up going as an internship or going on to work at Newell, you'll hear people talk about, oh, that's a blue need state or that's a yellow need state. And they'll refer to brands specifically with that terminology. And everybody instantly knows, not just in design, but also marketing and engineering. They all know what that means and what that product is trying to achieve and what that product is trying to do. So there's only 6 need states. So you can get through all of them after a couple of years. You end up working on one of them for an extended period, or all 6 of them over that time. So it's kind of tough to answer the question, but in that way, it makes it a little bit easier for us to work on so many different brands, in the portfolio. It's definitely not easy though, to learn and try to get used to the desires and the needs of each of those brands. Kind of long-winded, but that the need state is a cool tool, and like I said, that's a whole nother hour-long presentation that to get into that would be difficult, but that's one of the tools that we use.
Cool, thanks. Very good.
Yeah.
Any last question?
I have one more. The brands, are the design work, is it located mostly in Michigan, or does each brand have like design teams at like the headquarters of that brand? Or is it
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's 2 different types of companies at Newell under the umbrella. So we have they call them entrepreneurial companies. So those are like Marmot, for instance. They do their own thing. They have their own design group that's in Washington, and they do all the design work for them. But then there's a lot of companies that are under, we call it the GKM process, which is the standard marketing process. And that goes through a larger group. So we have a team right now in Kalamazoo. That's the largest group at Newell Design Group. There's 120 people in that building. But then, for instance, all the outdoor, like Coleman, and then Contigo and a couple of the beverage brands, they all work out of a Chicago office. So that's called the outdoor recreation and beverage group. So they're all, again, that's a center of excellence. That's kind of their gig. So any products that need to be developed within that kind of range of product goes to Chicago. We have another group in Exton. There's another group, like I said, here in Hoboken. There's a pure fishing group. We own 8 different fishing companies. And those groups are all down in Georgia. And then we have another group that's in Massachusetts. And then there's an Australian group, UK, and then another one in Taiwan. So those are each kind of groups that work on specific product, but they're hubs where a bunch of different brands are all kind of focused in one location. Yeah, the Hoboken. So our group here works across the realm, though.
If I was interested in going to a company like Marmot, is that something that you'd go straight through Marmot for, or would Newell Brands still be like overseeing like hiring or like internships for Marmot?
If you want to specifically go to Marmot, I would go to the Marmot site and check them out, because if you were to apply for the Newell internship, probably end up in Chicago, New York, or Michigan. So it'd be one of those 3. I would think, venture to guess. And that would work under. So there's probably, I want to say 60 or so brands that are under the group in Kalamazoo. So that's kind of the most breadth would happen if you got an internship in Kalamazoo. And then there's smaller amounts of companies that are in the Chicago office.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, for Marmot, it would be go to their. I would check out their site.
Very good. Thank you, Craig. This was amazing. He was a great student, a great teacher, great designers, great friends.
Yeah.
We also met in Florence, and that was nice. I will show you the photo after.
That was amazing. It was a good experience.
There were 2 couples, 4 people, so 3 of them all from CCS.
Yep. Yeah, we're all from CCS.
3 from Prada, 1 from Graphic. And they went there. They went to for a wedding of a colleague of Craig that was working out there, and we had a chance to meet and to have a good time there.
Yeah. Vincenzo ended up being in Florence at the same time we were, so it was really cool. We got to meet up and go to check out Florence through Vincenzo's eyes. It was pretty cool.
Very good. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It was very comprehensive. Well done. Thank you for your efforts. And of course, we will stay in contact, and probably you had the chance to come back to talk directly to the students, or you will have interns of graduates coming there and to work with you. Thank you so much.
Love to see that. Yeah, and again, I'll send you guys, Vincenzo, I'll send you an email with a list of the
Very good. Very good. Excellent.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay, I'll stop this.